The shuttle touched down on Kepler 442b with a soft hiss of steam. Minho looked out the window at the green world below him. Trees so tall they seemed to touch the sky stretched across the landscape in every direction. The jungle was everything the reports had said it would be: dense, thick, and alive with sounds that no one on Earth had ever heard before. He carried his bag down the metal stairs. His supervisor, Dr. Park Ji-won, stood waiting on the landing platform with her arms crossed. She was a tall woman with dark eyes that looked worried. Behind her stood a group of military officers, engineers, and scientists. They all had the same look on their faces. They were ready for danger. "Minho, you should not volunteer for this," Dr. Park said without any greeting. "We have already lost too many people to that jungle." Minho placed his bag down and looked at his supervisor. He was a quiet man, with soft features and kind eyes. He did not look like a hero or a warrior. He looked like someone who enjoyed reading books and taking notes. He smiled a little. "I am not going to die," Minho said. "I am going to listen." Dr. Park did not understand what he meant. She shook her head and walked away. The mission commander, Captain Kwon Tae-sung, approached Minho instead. Tae-sung was a tall man with a strong voice and strong muscles. He had been sent from Earth to manage the colonial outpost. He did not like volunteers who did not have military training. "You are the biologist?" Tae-sung asked. "Yes, xenobiologist," Minho replied. "I study creatures that are not from Earth." "Good," Tae-sung said. "We need someone who can identify dangerous animals. The last expedition had to run from everything they saw." "Yes," Minho agreed. "Running makes animals chase you. They see you as prey when you run." Tae-sung looked confused by this answer. He had not trained to think this way. He had trained to fight. But he did not argue. He simply showed Minho to the preparation area where the expedition team was waiting. The expedition had 142 people when they started 6 weeks ago. Now only 9 stood in the medical center. 2 of them had lost limbs to creatures with sharp teeth and sharper claws. 1 man could not speak anymore. 1 woman stared at nothing with empty eyes. The jungle had taken almost everything from them. These survivors told their stories. They spoke of creatures that could move faster than bullets. They spoke of plants that seemed to grab at their clothes. They spoke of sounds at night that never stopped. They spoke of friends who simply disappeared into the green darkness and never came back. Minho listened to every word. He wrote everything down in his notebook. The other team members watched him write. They thought he was crazy. Why would anyone go back to that jungle after hearing these stories? On the morning of the departure, 5 people joined Minho in the shuttle that would carry them down to the jungle floor. There was Rahi, an engineer who had built many structures on the colony. She was young and smart, with quick hands and a quick mind. She carried tools instead of weapons. There was Kyung-soo, a military officer who believed that strength and weapons could solve any problem. He carried a gun and a knife and extra ammunition. He looked strong, but his eyes had doubt in them. He did not want to go, but he had been ordered to go. There was Tae-sung, the communications specialist, who was different from Captain Tae-sung. This Tae-sung was small and nervous. He carried recording equipment to capture the sounds of the jungle. His fingers shook when he loaded the equipment. There was Mi-ju, a doctor who had learned medicine on Earth. She had medicine and bandages and knowledge of human bodies. She did not have knowledge of alien bodies or alien poisons. And there was Minho, with his notebook and his containers and his simple clothes that did not make him look like a warrior or a soldier. The shuttle descended through the clouds. As they got lower, the jungle became bigger and bigger. What had looked like green from space now looked like an endless ocean of trees and vines and plants. The sounds grew louder. The air became thick and heavy. When they landed, the jungle sounds stopped for a moment. Then they started again, louder than before. Something had noticed them. Something knew they were there. Minho was the first to step out. The air was warm and wet, and filled with smells that had no names. He took out his notebook and began writing immediately. Temperature reading, humidity level, air composition, sound frequencies. Everything mattered. The others followed him out slowly. Kyung-soo held his gun ready. Tae-sung held his recording device with shaking hands. Rahi looked at the trees and began calculating how to build a shelter. "The jungle is not our enemy," Minho said without looking at them. "It is just a place. The creatures here are just trying to survive, like we are trying to survive." Kyung-soo laughed. "The jungle killed 90% of the last expedition, and you say it is not our enemy?" "Yes," Minho said. "They did not understand the jungle. They were afraid. They ran. The creatures chased because they thought these people were dangerous." "So what do you want us to do?" Tae-sung asked. "Be nice to the killer animals?" "I want us to observe," Minho said. "I want us to understand. I want us to listen to what the jungle is trying to tell us." Rahi nodded slowly. She understood this kind of thinking. She had built machines by understanding how they worked, not by fighting them. "What do you want us to do first?" she asked. Minho looked at the surrounding area. He could see several large trees with unusual markings on their bark. He could see certain plants growing in specific patterns. He could see what looked like paths, though they were not paths made by human feet. "First, we build camp outside that marked area," Minho pointed. "See those markings on the trees? I think something lives there. Those marks are territorial warnings. If we build our shelter away from those trees, we will not invade anyone's home." "This is crazy," Kyung-soo said. "Maybe," Minho replied. "But the last expedition built their camp wherever they wanted, and 90% of them died. We will do something different." As the sun began to set and the jungle grew darker, the 5 explorers set up their camp in the location Minho had chosen. The sounds of the jungle continued around them, but nothing attacked. Nothing tried to kill them. Minho sat outside the camp and wrote in his notebook. He wrote about the sounds. He wrote about the patterns. He wrote about territorial markers and behavioral predictions. He wrote as if the jungle was a book that could be read if someone was patient enough to learn the language. The first night, everyone else was afraid. But they were alive. And that was a beginning. 2 weeks passed in the jungle, and the team was still alive. This alone was surprising to them. Every member expected to die daily, but they were not dying. Minho had explained his theories about the jungle, and slowly, the team began to trust his words more than they trusted their own fears. The first real test came on the 14th day. Kyung-soo was collecting water from a stream near the camp when something moved through the bushes. It was fast, too fast. Before anyone could react, a creature emerged that was nothing like anything in their databases. It was reptilian, with skin that shimmered like crystal. Its head was long and narrow, with teeth that looked like weapons. Its back was covered with spikes, made of the same crystal material. It was the most beautiful and most terrible thing Kyung-soo had ever seen. Kyung-soo screamed. His instinct was to fight. He pulled out his knife and moved into an aggressive position. The creature tilted its head, studying him with bright yellow eyes. Then it happened. The spikes on its back began to glow. They vibrated, and suddenly they shot off like projectiles, moving faster than bullets through the air. Kyung-soo fell to the ground with several spikes stuck in his leg and shoulder. He screamed again, a sound of real pain. Rahi and Tae-sung ran out of the camp to help him. Minho followed, but he did not run in panic. He moved slowly and deliberately. He was watching the creature carefully. The reptilian creature was not attacking again. It was backing away, moving slowly into the bushes. Its yellow eyes never left Minho. Then it was gone, disappeared into the jungle like it had never been there. Miju worked quickly to remove the spikes from Kyung-soo. They were sharp and smooth, and they came out cleanly. Kyung-soo's blood was red like human blood, which was good. The wounds were not deep, which was also good. He would live, but he would carry scars. "Why did you attack it?" Minho asked Kyung-soo quietly. Kyung-soo's face was twisted with pain and anger. "It was attacking me." "No," Minho said. "It was warning you. The spikes went into the ground around you, not into your body. The creature was showing you what could happen if you got too close to its territory. But you pulled your knife. You showed it that you were violent, so it protected itself." "I should shoot it next time I see it," Kyung-soo said. "If you shoot it, then something will hunt you," Minho replied. "Every action has a response here. We must learn to make friendly responses, not violent ones." Over the next few days, Minho studied the creature from a distance. He filled his notebook with sketches and observations. He learned that the creature was territorial, marking specific areas where the crystal-backed reptiles lived. He learned that they hunted at certain times of day. He learned that they made specific sounds before attacking. He learned that they avoided certain plants. Rahi was also learning. She began to notice patterns in how the plants grew. Some areas had thick plant life, while other areas were almost empty. She realized that the empty areas were hunting grounds. Predators needed space to move and hunt, so Rahi suggested building a shelter in an area where the plants were very thick. A predator would not choose such a place to hunt. "The plants provide cover," Rahi explained to the group. "If we are hidden in the plants, nothing will bother us. It is like an office building on Earth. You build walls around your space to protect it." Tae-sung had been recording all the sounds of the jungle. He had thousands of hours of recordings now. One night, he played them back at different speeds and different volumes. Something amazing happened. The sounds began to form patterns. Chirps and growls and whistles seemed to repeat in ways that looked like language. "I think they are talking to each other," Tae-sung said with excitement. "Listen, this pattern repeats every few hours, and this one responds to it like a conversation." Minho listened carefully. He began to understand. The jungle was not just a place of random sounds. It was a place of communication. The creatures were speaking to each other, telling each other where to go, where to hunt, where to rest, what was dangerous, what was safe. Miju discovered something different. She found plants that could heal. She found leaves that could reduce fever. She found roots that could help with pain. The jungle was not just trying to kill them. The jungle was also offering them medicine if they knew where to look. "Everything here has a purpose," Miju said, showing Minho the healing plants. "Nothing is just random. Everything works together." By the end of the third week, the team had created what they called the protocol. It was a system for living in the jungle safely. First, they understood territory. They never built in areas marked by other creatures. Second, they understood communication. They listened to the sounds and tried to understand what the jungle was saying. Third, they used the jungle's resources. They ate plants that Miju had tested for safety. They used water from streams where they had observed safe creatures drinking. Most importantly, they understood respect. They did not hunt for sport. They only took what they needed. They did not go into areas marked by other creatures. They did not make loud noises at times when the jungle sounded peaceful. The team had changed completely. Kyung-soo still carried his gun, but he was not eager to use it anymore. Tae-sung was no longer nervous. He felt at home with the sounds of the jungle, as if he was learning a new language. Rahi had designed a shelter that worked with the jungle, not against it. Mi-ju had become a student of jungle medicine, and Minho was filling notebook after notebook with knowledge. 1 month had passed. They were all alive. They were all healthy. They were all learning. And most importantly, the jungle had stopped being an enemy. It had become a teacher. At night, Minho would sit outside the camp and look at his notebook. He had begun something that would change everything. He was creating a guide, not a guide to survive the jungle, but a guide to understand it, a guide to listen to it, a guide to live with it in peace. He did not know it yet, but this guide would become the most important document in the history of human exploration. It would save lives. It would open doors to new understanding. It would prove that humans could do something other than conquer and destroy. For now, though, Minho was simply writing. He was listening. And the jungle was slowly giving up its secrets to someone who actually wanted to learn. The morning of the 5th week started like most other mornings in the jungle. The team woke to sounds that were now familiar to them. The same birds chirped in the same patterns. The same insects made their constant noise. The same wind moved through the trees in a gentle way. Everything was normal. Minho was the first one outside the shelter. He was checking the territorial markers on the nearby trees when he noticed something different. A new path had appeared overnight, leading away from their camp into the deeper jungle. The path was too clean and too clear to be made by accident. Something intelligent had created this path on purpose. Rahi joined him and looked at the path. "We have not made this path," she said. "And the jungle animals do not make paths like this." Minho nodded. He felt the hair on his arms stand up, but not from fear, from excitement. He looked at Rahi and said softly, "Something is trying to communicate with us." They followed the path carefully. Tae-sung carried his recording equipment. Miju carried her medical supplies. Kyung-soo kept his hand on his gun but did not pull it out. Minho walked first, notebook in hand, writing everything he saw. The path led to a small clearing surrounded by trees that had unusual markings. In the middle of the clearing sat a creature unlike anything they had seen before. It was small, perhaps 1 meter tall, covered in soft silver fur that seemed to shine in the filtered sunlight. It had large eyes that looked gentle and intelligent. It had hands with fingers that could move separately, just like human hands. It was watching them with curiosity rather than fear. Minho stopped walking. The rest of the team stopped behind him. The creature made a soft sound, like a question. It did not sound aggressive. "Stay calm," Minho whispered to the team. "This is not a hunter. This is a thinker." The creature stood up on 2 legs and took a step toward them. Kyung-soo made a move to pull his gun, but Rahi put her hand on his arm and stopped him. The creature saw this small movement and paused. It made another sound, higher this time, like it was not sure if it was safe. Minho did something that made everyone behind him nervous. He slowly walked forward toward the creature. He moved with care and respect. He did not point or grab. He simply approached like a person walking up to someone they wanted to meet. When Minho was close enough, he reached into his pack and took out some food. He had dried fruit from the jungle that Miju had prepared. He held it out to the creature on the flat of his hand. He said nothing. He simply waited. The creature looked at the food. It looked at Minho's face. It made a soft sound again, but this time it sounded less like a question and more like a greeting. It reached out with its small hands and took the food carefully. It ate the fruit slowly, never taking its eyes off Minho. "My name is Minho," he said softly. "I come in peace." The creature made a sound that might have been a laugh. Then it pointed to itself and made a sound that sounded like Gina. The creature was introducing itself. It was telling Minho its own name. Over the next few hours, Minho sat with Gina and learned her language through simple actions and gestures. Gina showed him how she moved. She showed him which plants were safe to eat. When the team was thirsty, Gina led them to a stream and showed them the cleanest place to drink. When they were confused about a sound, Gina explained by making that sound herself and showing them where it came from. Then, Gina did something remarkable. She made a call that was different from all the other sounds in the jungle. Within a few minutes, other creatures like her began to appear. There was a larger male that Minho understood was important. There was an older female with wise eyes. There were 3 younger ones that stayed close to Gina. Minho understood that these were Gina's family. They were not here to attack. They were here to meet the humans who had learned to respect the jungle. The older female, who Minho began to think of as Do-yeon because she had a calm and knowing presence, approached the group very slowly. She watched Rahi and Tai-sung and Mi-ju carefully, as if she was studying them like Minho had studied the jungle. Then she made a sound that was low and gentle. "I think she is welcoming us," Tai-sung whispered. "More than that," Minho said. "I think she is acknowledging us as intelligent beings, just like they are intelligent beings." Over the following days, the creatures stayed near the human camp. They brought food and showed the humans where to find water that tasted better. They made sounds that Tai-sung recorded carefully. They moved through the jungle and showed the humans which paths were safe and which paths led to dangerous territory. Mi-ju made an incredible discovery. One of the younger creatures was hurt with a deep cut on his arm. Mi-ju used her medical supplies to clean the wound and wrap it with bandages. The creatures watched carefully. When Mi-ju was done, Do-yeon approached her and made a sound that sounded like gratitude. The larger male, who seemed to be the family's protector, made sounds that Tai-sung recorded as a kind of celebration. Then the male brought Minho a gift. It was a tool made from stone and shaped carefully. It was beautiful and useful. It showed that these creatures had technology and skill. Minho understood the meaning of this gift. The creatures were not wild animals. They were people. They had families. They had culture. They had knowledge. They had tools. They had art. Everything that made humans feel special, these creatures also had. "This changes everything," Rahi said, watching the creatures rest in the camp. "Yes," Minho agreed. He was writing faster than ever before, filling page after page of his notebook with sketches and descriptions. "The jungle is not full of monsters. It is full of citizens. It is full of neighbors. It is full of people who were here long before we arrived." Gina sat next to Minho while he wrote. She watched his hands move across the paper. She made a curious sound, as if asking what he was doing. "I am telling your story," Minho said to her. "I am showing others that you are real, that you are important, that you deserve respect." Gina made a sound that might have been approval. Then she put her small hand on Minho's notebook, as if saying, "Yes, tell them about us. Tell them who we are." The team understood now why so many of the first expedition had died. They had treated the jungle as an empty place full of monsters to be conquered. But the jungle was not empty. It was full of life and intelligence and purpose. The creatures here had their own world, their own rules, their own way of living, and now, by learning and listening, the team had been invited to join that world. By the 8th week, Minho had filled 7 notebooks completely. His handwriting filled pages with drawings of creatures, maps of territories, descriptions of plants, and careful notes about the language of the jungle's intelligent beings. But he realized that scattered notebooks were not enough. He needed to create something bigger, something that could teach others without them having to suffer through weeks of learning on their own. He began to organize everything. In the first section of his new notebook, Minho drew maps. He showed which areas of the jungle were safe for humans, and which areas belonged to other creatures. He drew the territorial markers that showed the difference between one creature's home and another's. He marked the paths that were safe to walk on, and the places where dangerous hunters lived. In the second section, Minho created a field guide to the creatures. He drew each one with careful attention to detail. He wrote down their sizes, their behaviors, their sounds, what they ate, what times of day they hunted, and most importantly, how to avoid conflict with them. The crystal-backed reptile got its own page, with a note that said they were not aggressive if you stayed out of their territory. The large predators got another page, explaining that they only attacked if they felt their young were in danger. But most important was the section about the intelligent species. Minho created detailed drawings of Gina, Do-yeon, and the other family members. He wrote down all the sounds they made, what each sound meant, and how to respond. He described their craftsmanship, their family structure, their apparent understanding of ecology. He wrote that they were not animals. They were people. Rahi helped Min-ho create maps that showed the safest routes through the jungle. She used all her engineering knowledge to mark places where the ground was stable, where water was fresh, where the trees were strong enough to trust. She created a visual system that even someone who could not read could understand. Tae-sung contributed hundreds of pages of sound recordings translated into written form. He had discovered that the creature's language had patterns, like a grammar. He had begun to understand that different sounds meant different things. He had even started to communicate with Do-yeon using sounds he had learned. It was not perfect communication, but it was real communication. Miju drew pictures of all the healing plants she had found. She wrote down which plants could help with pain, which plants could reduce fever, which plants could help wounds heal faster. She explained which plants were safe and which were poisonous. She created a medical guide that could save lives. The field guide became known among the team as Min-ho's Atlas. It was not just a document, it was a bridge between two worlds. It was proof that understanding was possible. By the 10th week, Min-ho had finished the first complete version. He read it from beginning to end and felt satisfied. Every piece of information had been gathered carefully. Every drawing had been made with respect and accuracy. Every section was complete. He showed the guide to Do-yeon and the other intelligent creatures. Gina looked at the drawings of her own family with what could only be called wonder. She made sounds that the team had learned meant happiness and surprise. Do-yeon held the notebook carefully, as if it was made of gold. She turned each page slowly, studying every drawing and every word. Then something unexpected happened. Do-yeon made a sound that was complex and long. Other creatures appeared from the jungle, more creatures than the team had ever seen before. They seemed to gather for something important. They formed a circle around Min-ho, and Do-yeon placed her hand on his shoulder. "I think they are honoring you," Rahi whispered. "I think they understand what you have done." The older female made more sounds. The other creatures responded with their own sounds, creating a harmony that was beautiful and strange. Tae-sung recorded everything, knowing this was a moment that would never happen again. When the ceremony ended, Gina brought Min-ho 3 gifts. The first was a tool made from stone with incredible skill. The second was a garment made from jungle fibers woven together in a pattern that was both beautiful and practical. The third was a small object that looked like a symbol or a charm, carved from bone and marked with designs that had meaning. Do-yeon made a sound, and Min-ho understood somehow what she was saying. These gifts meant respect. These gifts meant that the creatures saw the humans as equals. These gifts meant that Min-ho had achieved something special. Kyung-soo approached Min-ho and did something surprising. He removed his gun and placed it on the ground. "I do not need this anymore," he said. "In this jungle, understanding is better protection than weapons." Over the following weeks, Min-ho continued to add to his field guide. But now he did more than just write and draw. He spent time with the creatures. He learned more of their sounds. He helped them gather food. He sat with Do-yeon and listened to her stories, even though he could not understand every word. He was living with another intelligent species and learning their way of life. The team's camp had changed too. It was no longer a human outpost in hostile territory. It was a place where 2 different species lived together. The creatures came and went freely. Sometimes Min-ho and Gina would sit together in the afternoon sun, not saying anything, just being present. That kind of friendship did not require words. By the 12th week, it became clear that something was happening that no one in the colony had thought possible. A human and an alien species had formed a real friendship, not a scientific relationship, but an actual bond of respect and trust. And this bond was being recorded in every page of Minho's field guide. Minho sat one evening and reread what he had written. Every page was true. Every drawing was accurate. Every observation had been made with care. This was not just a guide to survive the jungle. This was a guide to understand it. This was proof that humans could be something other than conquerors. The field guide was ready to change the world, but Minho did not know that yet. He only knew that he had learned something important. He had learned that the most powerful tool a human could have was not a weapon. It was curiosity. It was respect. It was the willingness to listen and to learn from someone different. The message came from the colony on day 107 of the expedition. The shuttle would arrive in 3 days to bring them back. Minho received the news with mixed feelings. He had completed his work. The field guide was finished. But leaving the jungle meant leaving Gina and Do-yeon and the family that had become his friends. He called a meeting with the team around their evening fire. The creatures sat with them, as they always did now. The boundary between human and alien had become invisible. "We must return," Minho said. "The colony needs us. The field guide needs to be shared with others. Our work here must have meaning in the larger world." Rahi nodded. "We can build a bridge between the colony and the jungle. We can teach others what we learned. But we cannot leave without saying goodbye properly," Miju said. She was looking at the young creatures who had become almost like children to her during the expedition. Tae-sung made a sound in the creature's language. Do-yeon responded with a long, complex sound that might have been agreement or might have been sadness. It was hard to know when dealing with people whose emotions expressed themselves in a language that humans did not fully understand. That night, Minho made a final addition to his field guide. He created a section dedicated to friendship. He drew pictures of his team with the creatures. He drew Gina reaching for Minho's hand. He drew Do-yeon teaching Miju about healing plants. He drew Ra-hee and one of the male creatures examining a rock formation together. He drew Tae-sung recording sounds while the creatures watched with curiosity. These images showed the most important discovery of all. These showed that two species could share trust and respect. The night before departure, Do-yeon approached Minho with something in her hands. It was a journal made from jungle materials. The pages were made from pressed plant fibers. The cover was made from bark that had been treated until it was strong and flexible. Inside, Do-yeon had made marks on every page. At first, Minho thought they were random, but then he understood. They were the sounds of her language, written in symbols that Do-yeon had created to match the spoken words. "Do-yeon has created a written language," Minho said with wonder. "She has done this for us, so that we could understand her words even after we left." He held the journal carefully, as if it was the most precious thing anyone could give him. In many ways, it was. It was proof that the creatures respected the humans enough to reach across the gap between their species and create something new. Gina gave Minho her own gift. It was a small carving of the two of them standing together. Gina had carved it from bone or hard wood, and it showed incredible skill. The face of Gina was recognizable. The face of Minho was recognizable. And between them was something that looked like a bridge. "She understands," Rahi said quietly. "She understands exactly what this friendship means. She understands that we are building a bridge between two worlds." On the morning of departure, Minho faced Do-yeon and made a decision. He approached her and spoke clearly. "Come with us," he said. "Come to the colony. Help us teach others about your people. Help us create real peace between our species." Do-yeon made a questioning sound. Minho realized she might not understand everything he said. But before he could try to explain differently, Gina made a sound. Then Hae-il, the larger male that Minho had learned was an important family member, made his own sound. Then more creatures came from the jungle. Minho realized what was happening. Do-Yan was asking the other creatures if they wanted to come, if they wanted to meet the larger human world, if they wanted to be part of something bigger. The answer seemed to be yes. Hae-Il stepped forward and made a complex sound that might have meant agreement. 3 younger creatures, including 2 that Mi-Ju had given the names Seong-Ho, Mi-Ju, and Ki-Young, made sounds that seemed enthusiastic. "They are coming with us," Tae-Sung said in amazement. "The creatures are choosing to come to the colony." The journey to the shuttle was long and careful. The creatures did not move like humans. They moved through the jungle with incredible grace, using branches and vines to travel through the trees rather than on the ground. The team followed them, and it took hours to reach the landing area. When the shuttle descended, the creatures made sounds of fear or surprise. They had never seen human technology before, but Do-Yan made a calm sound, and the others trusted her. They approached the shuttle with cautious steps. Inside the shuttle, the creatures looked out the window as the jungle grew smaller below them. The atmosphere changed, and the pressure shifted as they rose higher, but none of the creatures panicked. They trusted Minho and the team, and more importantly, they were brave enough to enter a completely unknown world. As the clouds parted and the colony came into view, Minho felt something change inside him. This was not just a successful expedition anymore. This was the beginning of something entirely new. This was humanity learning that it could do more than conquer. It could coexist. It could learn. It could build friendships with the unknown. The shuttle landed on the colony's platform with a soft touch. Through the window, Minho could see crowds of people waiting. They wanted to hear about the expedition. They wanted to see the field guide. But most importantly, they were about to learn that they were not alone, that the jungle held not monsters, but neighbors. That fear could be replaced by understanding. Do-Yan stood up and looked at Minho. She made a sound that was calm and determined. Gina held Minho's hand as the shuttle doors opened. The team gathered their supplies with the field guide held carefully by Minho. Behind them, the creatures who had trusted a human stood ready to meet a new world. And in that moment, something fundamental changed. The age of conquest was ending. The age of understanding had begun. The doors of the shuttle opened, and together, humans and aliens stepped out onto a future that was different from anything either species had imagined.